ever want to do this machine again. So what is the first step when we have our machine up and going if we don't know the IP address? We need to scan, right? So what is our command that we use? Net discover. So we'll type in sudo net discover. And then the range that we're going to use, we have to make sure we have that tac-r command so that way it checks the whole subnet, right? We'll go ahead and scan, make sure this machine's up. Let's see what it can find. Okay, it looks like we got something on 107. And then I always, after this, I like to just double check and my own IP address. Helps if I spell it right. And make sure. So I know that I am at 106 and the machine that we are attacking is 107. Okay, so everybody got this far, right? Yes, Mr. Houston. Awesome. We'll keep moving on. So now what's the next thing that we want to run? We need to start doing some enumeration, right? So think of it like us walking up to a building. We're going to check all the doors and see if they're open, right? To try to get inside. So what is the tool that we use to do that? Nmap. And then Nmap Automator. Yep. So I'm going to jump into the right folder here. And I'm going to remove the previous scans. Sure. I'm going to force remove. Okay, so we just have our script in this folder, okay? So we'll do Nmap Automator, and then tac-h for our host, and then -t tells it what type of scans to run. In this case, we want it to run all, okay? So after the first couple seconds, we see that we have a couple ports that are open, okay? Every time you find a port open, that becomes a possible objective or a possible way that we can get in. So what I always do is I usually have a pen and paper with me. I write those down, and then I start exploring those while the full scan is still running. Okay, the way Nmap Automator is designed, it'll do a quick scan first to kind of get you started, and then it'll do more in-depth scans, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to open up a new tab in our terminal, and then again, we want to stay organized, so we're going to rename this old session Nmap Automator. Don't get pulled into when you see stuff pop up. Like I just saw this came up. Looks like anonymous. I'm not going to get pulled into that. Okay, I want to make sure that I'm following my own methodology to a T. That way I don't miss anything, okay? So the next thing that I do is I like to do a little bit of knocking on doors. So those first initial ones that we find, we can go to. So we can either go to port 80 right now because we know there is a website there, or we can start going through and knocking on the different doors. What do you guys want to start with? Pick one. Okay, so what we're going to do for door knocking is we're going to type in NC, so that's netcat. That's a tool, network tool that is used to set up a either reverse shell. It's going to reach out and it's going to try to connect to the machine. But what's cool about this is it'll do what's called banner grabbing, so we can see what's running on the different ports. So in this case, it was 192.168.56.107. And what was our first port that we saw? 21. So I type in 21 as the port, and I can see that this is running VS-FTPD. Okay, so I would write that down, and that might be an exploit in the future. Note that we're not just going down that rabbit hole right now. We're still just doing our enumeration. The more time you spend doing enumeration, the less time it's going to take you to hack into the box. Okay, what's our next one that we found open? 22. Okay, we just get a welcome to Ubuntu 14.04.5. We'll write that down as well. Maybe there's some system level vulnerabilities that we could take advantage of and get in that way. What's our next one? 80. So when we go, so we try to set up a terminal connection on 80, we get absolutely nothing back because it's a web service. It's not meant to have a terminal connect to it, right? Like you would think a terminal like an SSH type terminal command line. What's our next one? 9090. Type it in, same result. So that's also telling us in the back of our head, those are probably web services, okay? Because they're not meant to have anybody connect to them. What's the next one? Okay, when we do that, flag, boom, first 10 points within the first couple minutes. They found my back door, Morty, and that is worth 10 points, okay? So 10 down, 120 to go. Okay, what's our next one? 22222. We'll hit that. Whoa, we get SSH. That's not the normal SSH thing, right? That's not the default port for SSH. We definitely want to notate that for the future because that means the system administrator is trying to hide what port SSH is running on so people don't log in. Security through obscurity, right? They're trying to make it a little harder for attackers to connect. So we know that's an SSH port. And then what's our next one? 60,000. Unknown connection refused. Was it 60,000? Interesting. It was refused. And you might have different results for that one. That's where there's actually a reverse shell hiding out there, but that's fine. We wouldn't know that if we hadn't gone through this already. Okay, so we got a flag and we got some more information, right? So let's do a quick check on those 2 ports that our door knocking did not work with. So it's 192.168.56.107. And if we don't put a port in there, it's just going to take us right to port 80. Morty's cool website. It's not finished yet, okay? Stop judging me. So the first thing that we want to do when we get here is do what? View the source. See if there's anything hiding. See if there's any other pieces of information that could get us closer to our goal. Looks like a pretty plain website. So, who found or who did some research and found out what robots.txt was? Anybody? So what happens when you create a website in relation to like Google and other web search engines? How do they know about your website? Yeah. Absolutely. So left untethered, the Google search bots are just going to go to every single website. They're going to follow every single link on your website. So what you can do is you can have a robots.txt file, which will basically hide your sensitive information from those crawlers, right? Because you don't want that private information out there on the public internet. So as part of your, whenever you're doing your enumeration for websites, it's always best to do /robots.txt. So here we see they're robots, Morty. It's okay to shoot them. They're just robots. But this is telling us that our system administrator was trying to hide some stuff from us, right? They're trying to hide /CGI bin /root shell, which sounds juicy, /tracer tool, and just the whole directory in itself. The wildcard means everything in the directory, okay? So it's telling it, don't go through these. Don't try to scan these folders, okay? So those are important things for us to check out in the future, okay? So let's go back to our Nmap scan. It should have finished by now, but I'm not sure. Let's go have a little look-see, if you will. Go back to Nmap Automator. See if it finished. Oh yeah, lots of good stuff was found. Okay. So let's go through this Nmap Automator scan and kind of make sense of it, okay? So these were our most used ports. We've already gone through and did a netcap. We already know what services are running on them. Okay, so we get to the first one. 21, FTP, connected to, logged in as FTP. So that means that it has anonymous login set up, okay? So normally I would read through this all in its entirety and then come up with, you know, crafting the exploits that we want to use. But I want to take you guys through these one by one so we can kind of explain them a little bit. Okay, so 21 FTP. So we will clear our screen here. We will connect via FTP to 192.168.56.107. Okay, name. What do we want to do our name as? Anonymous. So A-N, I always have a hard time spelling anonymous. ANONOMYOUS? We'll see. I'm going to do no password. Let's see what happens. It's thinking. Login incorrect. Exit. I'm going to have to actually spell anonymous. Google's how to spell anonymous. ANON. There we go. And no password. Login successful. Woohoo! Okay, so what's the first thing that we have to type once we get into the server? We want to look around, right? So if it was a regular terminal, we would type ls. Guess what works? Typing ls, because we're into a Linux system. So we get our another flag here. So how do we get that flag? How do we display the contents of that flag? Try cat. So you're on the right track. Normally it would fail because on this machine we know that cat's disabled, right? But we are currently in FTP. So we're inside of an application that has its own strict set of commands. Okay, so we need to do a question mark and see what allows us to download that flag or view that flag. We could do get, or we could also let's just try to edit it. We'll see if we have permission to edit it. Nope. So we will get it. Get flag.txt. Complete. So then we'll exit out of here, do an ls, and now we have flag.text. Yes, because we're back into our machine. We pulled that flag from that remote server, that text document down, and we got the, whoa, this is unexpected, for another 10 points. Down to 110 to go. Okay. So let's go ahead and reconnect. Let's make sure there was nothing else in that FTP server. We'll struggle through anonymous. And I don't know if I'll take specialized commands. CD in the pub. Yeah, there was nothing in pub either. So yeah, we're pretty much done with FTP at that point. Okay. Okay, let's look at our next port that was open. We had 22. SSH host key error, script execution failed. So what do we have to have in order to connect to an SSH session? What are the two pieces of information? Username and password. We don't have that yet, right? So we'll just skip 22 for now. Port 80. Again, just looking through, nothing really crazy at this point. Tells us the title. 9090 cockpit web service. Okay, so let's go check out port 9090. So what are we going to type into the web browser to get to the port 9090 version? Yep. So 192.168.56.107:9090. There is no Zeus in your face. Another 10 points. Mark that off down to 100. Okay, so on this website, so I viewed the source. I'll save us some time. There wasn't really anything on here. Also, if you notice, like, you can't even type in the password. So it's kind of a false positive. People see a login page and they're like, let's try to hack through that login page. But this, like, you couldn't even submit. Like, they removed all that stuff. So that's pretty much it for 9090. So let's go back to our scan and port 80. I feel like there's some more that we could do with port 80. We'll come back to that. So now it did a full scan. So this is going to check every port number. And you can see that we have a couple other things that popped up, which we kind of jumped the shark a little bit and we did our door knocking for all of the ports. But let's see if it found anything interesting. So we know that port 2222 is running SSH, which is cool. We already got the flag for 13337. So we don't have to worry about that one. Let's see if it found anything in UDB scan. It did not. Moving on down. Again, port 80. Just trying to see what other information we can find. Not a lot of vulnerabilities on any of these ports. It would tell you if there was any cross-site scripting stuff or anything you could do, any wonky stuff that you could do with forms. Moving on down. So now we have our Nikto scan. So Nikto is a tool that is used for finding vulnerabilities in web servers. So in this case, what it found was a directory called passwords. So let's open up our web browser and let's go see what juicy stuff we can find in there. 192.168.56.107/passwords. Okay, so flag.txt, flag, yeah, just don't do it. Okay, so we got another flag worth 10 points. We are at 100 points left to go. Let's go back. What else was in here? Passwords. Wow, Morty, real clever, storing passwords in a file called passwords.html. You've really done it this time, Morty. Let me at least hide them. I'll delete them entirely, but I know you'd go bitching to your mom. That's the last thing that I need. So what should we do here? Any website that we find, any web page that we find, what do we do? What's that? View the source. So we're going to look here, and we get our first artifact, and that is the password of winter. So we don't really know what winter is for quite yet, but we're going to write it down as something that we found. Good stuff. Moving on down. Sometimes you can go into like the icons. There could be stuff. Definitely don't turn any, leave any stone unturned when it comes to directories. And here you can see we found our robot.txt. So this is using FFUF. So this will help you. It basically tries a bunch of different URLs and then tells you what the status was. So 403 means that it's not found, but the 200 is things that it actually found. So it found 2 different HTML. And if you run this, if you run this by itself, you have more configuration options where you could go multiple layers deep. So if there was a folder that had like 10 websites in it with other folders and whatnot, you could have this keep going. It would just take a little bit longer. But this is kind of a basic, just kind of a basic scan. So it then went through and it did the Nikto scan on the other web service that was running, which was on port 9090. Not really anything interesting found here. Plus, we already have the flag from that one, so there wasn't really much to go off of. So let's check out port 80, because remember, we found in robots.txt, we found something interesting that they were trying to hide, right? 192.168.56.107. And then what was it? CGI bin. Oh man, we don't have access. But what was the actual URLs? root_shell.cgai. It's under construction. View the page source. Ha ha ha. I'm sorry. It's a bummer. They got us. So we'll close that one out. What's the other one? It was trace something, right? Tracertool.cgi. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what is CGI. Did anybody do some research on what CGI was or what it allows you to do? So if you went through the room, like you typed stuff in and then stuff came back, right? So what it does is it allows you to use, think of it like using real software over a web portal. Okay, so for example, we built this trace tool so we could type in 8.8.8 and hit trace, and then it's going to try to run traceroute in order to find it. But if we type in ls, we get nothing back. So it's filtering out, and it's only allowing it to use that single tool, right? But how can we use our knowledge of the command line in order to try to send it different commands? Run multiple at once. So we know, we can imagine that traceroute is already going to be in here, right? So if we wanted to run multiple commands, what would we put after traceroute? Okay, so let's try semicolon. So we'll go here, and then we'll just type in who am I to identify who I am on this system. Let's see if that works. We are Apache. So we can actually send this server some commands, okay? So now, Apache, we know, is going to be a limited user, okay? At this point, we don't know who the users are on this system. So what could we type in? Where are all of the users stored in a Linux system? In what file? Etc. password. So how would we look at etc. password? What would we type in? Okay, so we'll type in our colon, and then cat slash, what'd you say? etc., etc. Yep. Pass WD. Let's see what comes up. Oh no, we got a cat. That's not what we expected. Hilarious, but not what we expected. So that means we probably can't use the cat command, right? So what other commands are similar to cat but do different things? Less, more, what else? Heads, tails. Yep, absolutely. So let's try that same command. We'll start with more, and then I'll explain something. So more slash etc slash passwd. So when we do this, we have the entire listing of all the users that are on the machine itself. So another thing you could have typed, someone said head and then slash etc slash passwd. So when you do heads or tails, it's only going to give you the first, I think it's 10, basically the first 10 lines, okay? So if you would have listed this, you wouldn't have seen all the users, because in a Linux system, all your system level users are going to be at the top. So if you ever have the option to only run one of the commands, you're going to want to do the tails, because that's where any like physical users that have been added by the sysadmin are going to show up. So slash etc slash passwd. We'll hit trace. Oh, did I forget my colon? Tail, and we want to do slash etc slash passwd. So now we have a couple different users, okay? All of these are system level users, but these last four are interesting. So we have Rick Sanchez, Morty, Summer, and Apache. Okay, so what is the password that we have so far? We have Winter. So does Winter go with Rick? Does it go with Morty? Does it go with Summer? Yeah, they kind of go together, right? I mean, normally you would try all three of them. You would put them in a text document and use something like Hydra in order to spray those passwords. But we're just going to use our context clues to see if Summer and Winter are the username and password combinations. So when we look at our scans, where would we try to, with the ports that we have open, where would we want to try these usernames and passwords? Where are some places that we need a username and password for? SSH is one. Where else? And there's SSH technically on 2 ports at this point. So what else could we use that username and password for? What's that? Admin login. So if we had some type of physical access to this machine, we could type it. In this case, it's a VM, so we shouldn't just like go to the VM and try typing it in, because that's kind of cheating, because we wouldn't normally have that in a environment. And we have FTP too, so we could try to log in with our those credentials into the FTP server. But in this case, we're going to use SSH. Okay, so let's start off with our default port of 22. So what command do we type in order to connect via SSH to this machine with the username and password of Summer and Winter? SSH. Summer. So you could do that, or you could hit enter. And in this case, we tried going over the default port, and it instantly closes it. Okay, but we know that there's another default port, right? Or another port that's open for SSH, because when we did our door knocking, it told us that it was running SSH. Yeah, so let's do SSH-P22222, maybe? I think that's what it was. And we'll try Winter as the password. Permission denied. Uh-oh. What am I doing wrong? What's that? I am not. No. It's not it. What's that? So, what does Linux like when it comes to typing things out, like commands and stuff? It is very case sensitive, right? So when we first typed that in there, we had a lowercase s. But if we look back in the actual passwd file, it was a capital S, which is super confusing, because you could technically have 2 users in the system. One is a capital and one is a lowercase. So like you could go down that rabbit hole if you have a user that's having issues, and it could just be that they're two different users. First command, we want to look around as soon as we get in here. We see a flag. So what do we type in? We normally would cat it, but we know it's broken because we actually have a cat. So what do we want to type? Sure. Yep. So we'll do flag.text. And there it is. 10 points. Down to 90 points. Okay, so can we go anywhere else here? So we can. So we change directories back, and we see these 3 users. So in this case, just to make it easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a tree and then /home. Okay? So by doing that, it opens up all of the different folders so we can see what is in there. Okay, so where do we want to start? We already got the summer flag. You want to start at the top and work our way down? Sound like a plan? Cool. Good chat. So we have journal.text.zip and safe_password.jpg. So let's see if we'll change directories into Morty. So how could we're in a terminal session, so how could we look at that JPEG? What do we have to do? We could change its file type. Okay. What else could we do? Because we're on a machine that has a full graphical user interface, right, with Kali? So we could download it, right? So how would we download it? So that would install software on the local machine. So that wouldn't do it for us. We need to figure out a way that we can download the file. We need to exfiltrate it. Okay, we're exporting it in that we're trying to get it out of there. So when it comes to copying files or downloading files in an encrypted way with SSH, does anybody know what that command is or that tool that's used? Secure copy is what it's called. Any guesses? NC would say, we would do a terminal. So SCP is secure copy. So what we're going to do is we're going to type SCP, and then we're going to type in safe_password. And then what we're going to actually do is from this machine, we're going to SSH back into ourselves. Okay? Because we have a connection here, and there's not an easy way to download it. Now, if you use Metasploit and you did your SSH through Metasploit, you could simply just type download at this point, okay? And you could download whatever files you need. Because it has a couple extra tools in its SSH client that allow us to do that. But on some of the certification tests, like the OSCP, they don't like you using Metasploit. You can use it for like that use case, but it's best to just try to find built-in tools in order to do this stuff. But if you connected with Metasploit using the SSH_login, then you could just type download and then the file name, okay? But we're going to do it this way because this is what's installed on most machines. So in this case, we're going to do whatever your username is. So in my case, it is Zodiac at 192.168.56.1. I think I'm 106. And then where do I want to save it to? I want to save it in home/desktop. I'm sorry, Zodiac /desktop. Okay. And there's probably already one there, so it might error out, but yeah, let me. Kali dash tweaks. So let me test that real quick. Okay, so let me go turn on the SSH server. There's an issue in a latter part of this lab that you have to turn off compatibility mode. So I just wanted to actually just test that real quick. Sudo systemctl Okay, so right now I don't have my SSH server running on this local machine, so I'm going to start my SSH server. So it's going to allow for people to connect to me. We could see here it is now active and listening, where before it was inactive. So we'll run that command again. Now it's asking for a password. It's a good sign. Okay, so it transferred that file. So now on my local machine, I put it in the desktop. So we have journal.txt.zip. So what tool are we going to use to unzip that? Or no, we're working on the safe password right now, right? Sorry. Okay, so on my desktop, we have, this is the picture that we downloaded. So this is the safe password. I have a feeling that all is not what it seems to be. So what tool could we use in order to basically convert that over to a string in order to look at the data that might have been saved in there? So we're going to use gunzip when we get to the journal part. Journal.txt, yes. But we're looking at a photo right now, and we need to see the file, but just in a, like in string form. So it's just in text. Strings, yes. So the command strings, so if we type strings and then whatever the file is, so safe underscore password, we could see there's a whole bunch of gobbledygook. Let's jump to the top here and we'll start at the way and work our way down. And this is good just to identify like if there's been changes in files or if something was tried to be, if it was hidden. So here we have at the top of this file in the metadata, it says the safe password. The file is journal.txt.zip and the password is me-seek. Okay? So journal.txt is the file that we need. The password is me-seek. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to unzip that file. So we're going to type gunzip and then, was it journal? Not really. It's just the GNU unzip. It's just a different version of it. There's a couple different like text like switches that you can do, but that's about it. Yeah. So we're gonna type unzip, and then it's gonna ask for the password, and that was me-seek. Me-seek. Oh, me-seeks. Was it capital M? M-E-E-S-E-E-K. Me-seek. M-E-E-S-E-E-K, capital M. Capital M-E-E-S-E-E-K. Replace. Sure. Okay, so it is now inflated. So let's cat out journal.txt. And we get a flag. Woot! Note the number of that flag. Which is important. Oh, that was a 20-pointer. We're down to 70 points, and that was 131333. Okay? So today, Rick told me a huge secret. He had finished his flask and was on to commercial-grade paint solvent. He sputtered something about a safe and a password. Or maybe it was a safe password. Was a password that was safe, or a password to a safe? Or a password to a safe? Anyway, here it is. So it's telling us that this is the piece of information that we need to have, that 131333. So if we go back to our machine and look at our tree here, we could see that there is something called safe, right? It is Rick's safe. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to download that file as well. So SCP, we're currently in summer. So we need to go try to get into Rick's directory, and then we're going to run our SCP command, but the file that we're going to actually download is called safe. Oh. Also, there's a thing that says this doesn't contain any flags. So let's go ahead and look at it just in case, because we don't want to leave any flags unturned. So this doesn't contain any flags. Not a flag.text. So quit. So cd into Rick safe. There's a file here called safe. So now we'll do our SCP of safe to the desktop. Okay, so let's look at our local machine and let's see what this thing is actually doing. So we'll do a strings on safe and see what all this does. Okay, so it is going to use libcrypt, so something is going to be encrypted. Tell future Rick to use the command line. Okay, so let's try to... What type of file is safe? So safe is not a directory, so let's just try to run it to see if it's a program. Tell use the command line. Okay, so let's try, what was it? 131333 was the command? Okay, so that opened up our flag, and there are safe, and there's 20 points. So we are now down to, I'm counting 50. So I downloaded that safe as a whole, and then I typed in the combination afterwards, which was 131333. Okay, so now Rick's password hints. So we're getting closer to the end of this machine. This is in case I forget. I just don't forget how to write a script to generate potential passwords. Also, sudo is really good. Okay, so this is telling us we need to come up with some type of list of passwords. And once we get that password, once we log in, we want to become a sudo user. Okay, so our options, or our password, is 1 uppercase character, 1 digit, and then use one of the words in my old band's name. What is the name of his old band? Anybody remember? Anybody on Rick and Morty? I definitely had to Google this. Anybody's Google foo good? The Flesh Curtains. It really, really is. Okay, so we need to create a word list in order to pump into a tool in order to log in. So before we jump into that tool, how are we going to connect to this machine? What do we have right now? What do we have right now? What level of access do we have? We have a basic user, right? So if we go here and then try to cd into /root, it tells us that permission is denied, right? So we're hoping that Rick is a super user on this machine, so that way we can get to that root flag, okay? So what tool do we use in order to generate word lists? Anybody have any ideas? So Dirbuster will go through a website, and then it'll tell you what like directories are there. But it uses a word list in order to do that. Dylan, what's the name of the tool that we use to create the word lists? I know you are. You're the one that actually did this. Not that part. Did you? We are going to use Hydra, but we have to feed a list into Hydra. So our logic is 1 uppercase character, 1 digit, and then one of the words in the band name. Okay, so that could create about 200 and so you have 10 numbers, 26 letters, so 260 different combinations times 2 because you have flesh and curtains. So you could go through them one by one and do it. You could create like a Python script that has that logic to create that text document. But what's another tool that you can use in order to automatically do this for you? Anybody? It is crunch, crunch, crunch. So let me make sure that I remove curtain dot word list. Remove. Okay, so we're gonna type in crunch, and then we have a really bad kind of help because it says crunch, min, max, and then our options. So let's do a man on crunch to see what type of different things that we could have in here. So we're looking at developing our statement that'll help us create the word list, okay? So if we look here, we have the tac T option, and that tells us that the @ sign will insert a lowercase character, the comma will insert an uppercase character, percent will insert numbers, and the caret will insert symbols, okay? So we have crunch, our min and max, so 10 and 10, because we have number, letter, curtains. So our longer one is going to be curtains. That is our maximum, right? Our minimum is also going to be 10, right? Because, again, we just spelled it out. So then we have to do tac T to say we want the special options that we just saw in the man page. They were, anybody remember what they were? Yep. Yeah, for lowercase. So what was the uppercase one? Remember? So it'll be comma, percent, and then whatever word you want it to be. So we'll do crunch, 1010, tac T, comma, percent, curtains. And now you could do the tac O to do the output, or you could just write it to a file. So using the little greater than sign will take all of your anything that comes out of this command and put it into whatever you say. So in this case, we're going to do curtains dot word list and hit enter. Okay, so it looks like the math is mathing. We're at 260. So let's do a cat on curtains dot word list. Did it do what we wanted it to do? I mean, didn't? That's what we wanted it to do. Yeah, so that's exactly what we wanted it to do. So we would have to do the same thing for flesh, right? F. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this one I think will be 7 and 7. And this one will be called flesh. Okay, 260. That's what we were looking for. Beautiful. So we have our two different word lists that we're going to use, right? Because it could be either of those passwords. You could go in and combine them. So it's just one big word list, or it's just their short list, so Hydra will make very quick work of them. Yeah, individually. Yeah. Like I said, you could copy and paste quickly into one list, but sometimes it's just easier just to run the command again, because Hydra will take seconds to go through 260 combinations. Yeah. So that's what we're moving on to now is Hydra, okay? So for Hydra, we're going to... We'll just type it in for now. And let's see what type of things that we have as our options. Step 1 is please do not use in military or secret service organizations or for illegal purposes. This is non-binding, and the 3-star generals will ignore laws and ethics anyways. I just love that little stab that they have. That the government's going to use whatever it wants to use. So our syntax is Hydra, what login we want to use, and then which file we want it to go to. So what service are we going to try to spray for this? Because we have FTP, SSH, and a website that doesn't have a password. So it's probably not that. So either FTP or SSH. SSH, absolutely. So somebody look up, how do you use Hydra in order to password spray against a SSH server? Yeah. Yep. Okay. Also, you could kind of use context clues. So the last example has Hydra-L user-capital P password list FTP : / 192.168.0.1. So I'll take what is there and start building this command. Okay, so it's going to be Hydra. And then who is our user? It is Rick Sanchez with a capital R and a capital S. And then our password list. Which one do we want to start with? Curtains. Okay. So curtains - word list. And then we're going to use SSH, right? 192.168.56.106. Will this work? What alarm should be going off in your head right now from doing our enumeration? What do we know about the default port right now? It's closed. So what? The 5.2s, absolutely. So we're going to use, what's that? Yep. So we'll, yes. Yep. You had to install OpenSSH and then start that service up. So it acts as an SSH server at that point. So Hydra - L, Rick Sanchez. Let's do curtains. We get a connection refused. That's very interesting. Curtains, make sure this is right. 192.168. Is it 1? It's 107. I'm 106. Target. Let's see. Hydra, max 1 task per server. 1 of 1 target completed. 0 valid passwords were found. Okay. So let's try Flesh. 0 valid passwords. Let me look at. Hydra, Rick Sanchez. Can someone look and make sure it's capital R, capital S? I think it is. So that's our login. Let's do. Is it curtain or curtains? That might have been what I messed up. Blah 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 blah. Attacking SSH. So let's try. Do I have the right amount of 2s? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I have to sudo. Let me double check. Oh, I want to make sure that that's actually alive real quick. Yep. I'm going to reboot that machine real quick. Because it might have, from yesterday me attacking it, it might have timed out. Pause while we restart our virtual machine. What questions do you guys have so far? Is it pretty straightforward how I'm explaining it? Was this what your kind of methodology was as you went through? Did you install SSH? You might have to download it. Yeah, you have to download the server. Kali. And it's listening. Says protocol not available. We'll look at it here in a minute. Okay. Yeah. I do only because I feel like it saves time and like that's gonna run for a while anyway. So like I like to just go and like waste a little bit of time just like doing some manual checks on stuff. And like in the case of CTFs, like you'll find easy stuff like that one flag. Yeah, it was an easy. It's an easy flag, and it just kind of early on gives you a good feeling. That is super weird that that's not pulling up that password. And it was one capital, right? I'm gonna rebuild the list just to be 100% sure. Crunch 10, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. Okay, so now let's try our Hydra again. Our fresh list. Hydra. Attack 4. I'll do a quick SSH into it, make sure that server is still running. So who has anybody followed along? Has anybody followed along this far? Has anybody followed along with me this far? Because I think what it is mine has it stored and no new valid passwords are found because I did this one last night. I don't think so. Mm-mm. I think it's because everything is all the same. It's not finding any newer passwords. So when you run, actually, here, let's try to trick it. Because I know that I did not do this one. Doesn't like that one either. So normally what you'll see is where it says, it'll come up with a screen. And if you go to my site, medium.tjhouston.com. I posted this walkthrough yesterday for you guys. But you'll see on the screenshot, it'll actually show up the password that did work. So in this case, it is P7 curtains is the actual password itself. Again, I'm not sure why Hydra's being weird right now. Again, I think it's just because it's overlapping and it already knows that I did this machine. So, or it's something like super silly that I'm totally overlooking. So we're going to log in with Rick now. So we're just doing our SSH space Rick Sanchez at 192.168.56.107. And then we're doing the TAC P to put in the port. So once we get in here, we'll do ls. We've already been here before, right? We navigated from the other user. We were able to get into his home directory. So let's try to cd into root because that's usually where all the good stuff is located. What did the command tell us? Our flag right before this, what did it tell us? And away we go, yeah. But there was something it said, it's very important to do what? Become a what when we get out on the machine? Yep. So we'll do sudo and then tac I for interactive. So we'll type in his password again. Yeah, the -I. So now we are as root. We can do an ls and see our last flag. Aww. And flag.text. So there is our last flag. Ionic defibrillator. My math is off because it still says that we have like 20 more, but that's all the flags. I think I just forgot to mark one off. So now we are on the whole goal when it comes to these CTFs is becoming the root user because now we can do whatever we want on this machine. Okay, so if we wanted to deface this website, we could. If we wanted to start getting into like passwords and getting more information about a user, we could. Okay, so anybody have any questions about any of the flags that were on this machine? And like I said, if you go to my website, it'll take you through step by step. So if you need to write down any of those commands, copy those commands over into your Google Docs so you have them for the next machine. Yeah.
Just for my notes, we mentioned earlier about the Metasploit, and it automatically has tools that go.
Yeah, you want to check them out?
Yeah, and then also like, what are those tools? Are you able to implement those individually without Metasploit?
Not really. They're kind of built into the Metasploit command line or the framework itself. So that's why when you're doing machines, you want to try to get a Metasploit shell, a Meterpreter shell, because it has that command like get system, for example, where it pulled all those hashes down. You remember when we did blue? So you would normally have to go and like put a tool onto that machine in order to get those hashes to be downloaded, but they're built into that Meterpreter. Same thing with like turning on the camera and stuff like that. Yep. Yeah. So there's an idea in pen testing as well as cybersecurity as a whole, and that's called living off the land. Okay. So living off the land means you're using the tools that are on the local machine in order to survive. So having Metasploit, you might not always have it, but SCP, chances are you're probably always going to have access to that because that's like a baked in Linux thing. Same thing with like Python. What you'll do is, as we do a couple more of these machines, you'll set up a little Python web server on the local machine, and then you'll use your machine to connect to it to download files, to exfiltrate files. That's called living off the land. So we'll search for SSH and Metasploit. So we want the SSH underscore login is the one that we want to find. Let me actually do a better search because there's way too many results. So search SSH underscore login. There we go. So we'll use SSH underscore login and then show options. Oh, there's two of them. We're going to use 0. So then show options. So these are the options that we have. So we could use it to brute force. But in our case, we are just going to use it to connect. So set username as Rick Sanchez. Yeah. Yep. So set password as capital P7 curtains. The other thing that we have to change is what? Is it using the default port?
No, it's using the so you set what is it? R4.
Yep. And then we have to set our R host. So set our hosts, and it's 192.168.56.107. Now we can run, hopefully. Scan 101, blah, blah, blah. SSH1 is open. So let's look at our sessions. Session, interact, 1. Trying to remember what the command line is to get to that session. I don't remember the command to interact with that session off the top of my head. I'm blanking. Do you remember from that last one? Yeah. What did we do to upgrade it?
To upgrade it, it was just the session dash U and then the session you're trying to upgrade.
You're putting only session. You put sessions for the other commands.
What's that?
You only put session. What if you put
Yeah,
session?
you gotta put
Sessions. Upgrade 1.
Like that's why you couldn't do the I command before to put like
Session 2 is open. So now we have a interpreter shell on that actual machine. So this is where you have that list of all your commands if you upgrade it. But then also, if we just do sessions 1, this is the raw SSH. Let's see if that one's still open. So upgrading, well, you'll get like a base level connection with a machine, and it doesn't have like all the capabilities of Bash. It might only have like 1 or 2 commands. Like, it's hard to explain. We'll have a machine where you'll get like a really, really broken shell. And it's like, think about it like having like a really crappy car that you don't know if it's going to make it to your destination or not. And then you upgrade it to like a newer machine or a better machine that's actually more dependable. Yeah. Yep. So we're in the machine right now. So this is like, see how it's this broken shell where there's not like there's nothing that even tells us like where we're at. So like even if I type in, then it spaces down. We don't know that we're actually interactive. That's why you do the sessions-u to upgrade it to a interpreter shell, because that's what's going to give you all the commands. So if I type in sessions, we'll just run again. So it created a session. It's called session 3. Yep, so we'll do sessions, tac u to upgrade it. And then the session that we want to upgrade is 3. So it's going to download some code onto the local machine in order to create this better shell. That'll give us more access. Yep. It's always interpreter. Yeah. Yeah. So now if we go to sessions, we'll see that there's a interpreter shell running for 4. So we'll go to sessions and then 4. Now we have interpreter. Yep. So now with the download command, you can see that I have all these other things to be able to download. So if I hit an ls, I could see Rick Safe, and I could just I could change directory into Rick Safe. Notice I have tab working too. That is huge. Those really garbage shells don't let you do autocomplete. So it slows you down, and it's a pain in the ass. Yep, so now the file safe, I can download safe, and you can see it saved it here to home/zodiac/safe. So if we type in download too, there's another cool thing where you can have it where you can make it smaller blocks. So that way you can get by any intrusion detection systems. They can see you exfiltrating this data. This allows you to make it. Yeah. Yeah, you can make it like super, super, super tiny, and it just looks like regular web traffic.
Yeah.
Yep.
So HTML size.
And that was changing the, what was it called? The
Block size. All right. Any other questions? Okay. If you do, let me know.